Humans walked away and the Galactic Council realized too late. What they'd lost, Part 1. The Galactic Council chamber hung in silent orbit above the gas giant Xylos, a place of polished obsidian floors and floating data orbs that shimmered with the languages of 100 species. Delegates from across the spiral arm gathered here every solar cycle to debate trade routes, mediate border disputes, and maintain the fragile peace that held the galaxy together. Among them sat the humans, quiet, unassuming, and often ignored. For nearly 50 standard years, Earth had held a single seat on the council. Not because they were powerful, not because they commanded vast fleets or wielded ancient technologies, but because they had done something no one else could. They had stopped the Cator-Varelian War before it consumed 3 sectors. It had not been through force or diplomacy alone, but through a strange mix of stubborn kindness and impossible engineering. A human engineer named Carl Dawson had rerouted a dying starship's core using parts scavenged from a garbage scow, saving both Cator and Varelian ambassadors trapped aboard. A linguist named Lena Ortiz had spent 3 sleepless nights translating not just words, but emotions between species who had not spoken in centuries. Yet, despite that, humans remained the junior partners. The Xanthari, with their crystalline skin and 1,000-year lifespans, spoke of them as ephemerals. Here today, gone tomorrow. The Cator hive mind referred to them as noisemakers, too emotional, too unpredictable. Even the gentle Varelians, who valued harmony above all, saw human culture as chaotic, messy, and inefficient. Carl and Lena never argued. They showed up. They listened. They fixed what was broken. Carl was in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and hands that always smelled faintly of machine oil. He wore a simple gray jumpsuit, no medals, no rank insignia. He didn't need them. On more than one occasion, he had crawled into the ventilation shafts of the council station to repair a climate regulator that the station's own engineers had declared beyond organic intervention. He once jury-rigged a food synthesizer using a child's toy motor and a piece of copper wire after it failed during a summit banquet. No one thanked him, but the meal went on. Lena was younger, in her early 40s, with warm brown eyes and a voice that could calm a panicked alien child or diffuse a shouting match between rival delegates. She didn't just translate words, she translated intent. When a Xanthari elder accused a Droth trader of stealing silence, a cultural offense involving sound pollution near sacred meditation zones, Lena explained that the Droth ship's engine hum was not intentional disrespect, but a design flaw. She then worked with Carl to modify the engine so it ran near silent. The Xanthari, stunned, offered the humans a rare gift, a shard of living crystal that glowed when near truth. Carl kept it on his desk. He never showed it off. For years, this was how it went. Humans solved problems no one else noticed until they exploded. They patched systems, smoothed conversations, and quietly held the edges of the galaxy together. And the council barely noticed. Then one day, they stopped coming. It began subtly. A scheduled maintenance check on the central comms array went unattended. Carl usually handled it himself, humming old Earth songs as he worked. This time, no one came. The array failed 2 days later, causing a 12-hour blackout in diplomatic channels. Engineers from 3 species tried to fix it. None could replicate Carl's backwards-forward wiring trick. A week later, a cultural summit between the Nalari and the Grix collapsed into shouting when a key phrase in the peace accord was mistranslated. Lena would have caught it. The word yield in Nalari could mean surrender or harvest, depending on tone. Without her, the Grix felt insulted. Talks broke down. Still, the council assumed it was temporary. Maybe Earth was dealing with internal issues. Maybe their transport ship was delayed. They sent polite inquiries. No replies came. 3 months passed. The human delegation's quarters remained dark. Their comms channel stayed silent. Patrol ships near Sol Sector reported odd readings. Earth's orbital stations were empty. No traffic. No signals. Just drifting solar panels and silent docking clamps. Counselor Vex of the Xanthari finally called for an investigation. A small scout vessel, piloted by a young Varelian named Mira, was dispatched to the Sol system. What she found chilled her. Earth City still stood. Lights flickered in some windows. Automated farms grew crops. But there were no people. No voices, no ships in the sky. The planet broadcast old music, weather reports from decades past, and children's cartoons on loop. It was as if everyone had stepped out for a moment and never returned. Mira landed near what had been Geneva, where the old United Nations building stood. Inside, she found Carl's final log, recorded on a battered datapad left on a desk. His voice was tired but calm. "You kept calling us fragile," he said. "Short-lived, loud, messy, and you were right, we are. But mess is how stars are born. Noise is how new songs start. You wanted order. We gave you solutions wrapped in chaos, and you threw them away because they didn't come in neat packages." He paused. The recording crackled. "We tried to show you, not with speeches. With actions. Every bolt we tightened, every word Lena softened, every life we saved without asking for credit. You never saw us. Not really. So we're leaving. Not in anger, in peace. Build your perfect galaxy. Just don't be surprised when it falls apart without someone willing to get their hands dirty." The log ended. Mira returned to the council with the datapad. When she played it in the main chamber, silence fell deeper than any vacuum. For the first time, the delegates looked at the empty human chair, not with relief, but with a dawning dread. They had not lost a minor species. They had lost the only ones who truly knew how to hold things together, and it was already too late to call them back. Humans walked away, and the Galactic Council realized too late what they'd lost. Part 2. At first, the galaxy kept turning. The stars still burned. Trade ships still flew. The council held its meetings, debated its laws, and issued its rulings. But something was off. It was like a song missing one quiet note. No one could name it, but everyone felt the wrongness in their bones. The first real trouble came from the relay stations. Humans had built and maintained most of the long-range communication network that linked the outer sectors to the council core. Their designs were simple, almost crude by Xanthari standards, patched with spare parts held together by logic that seemed more like intuition than engineering. But they worked. Even during solar storms or ion surges, the human relays stayed online. Now, without Carl Dawson or his team to check them, the relays began to fail. One by one, signals dropped. A mining colony on Vexus 9 lost contact for 11 days. When comms finally returned, they reported near riots over food rationing because no one had received the updated supply schedule. A medical ship carrying rare antivirals to the Nilari homeworld drifted off course after its navigation feed cut out. By the time it arrived, half the patients were dead. The council sent its best engineers to fix the relays. They replaced human-made components with superior standardized parts. The systems failed faster. No one understood why. The humans had left no manuals, no schematics, just a few scribbled notes in margins that read things like, "Don't tighten this bolt past oops," or, "If it smells like burnt toast, unplug it and walk away." Meanwhile, misunderstandings grew. Without Lena Ortiz, translation errors piled up. A routine trade agreement between the Droth and the Grix turned sour when the word flexible was rendered as weak in Grixian. The Droth took offense. The Grix doubled tariffs. Tensions rose. On the council floor, arguments grew louder, longer, angrier. Delegates who once compromised now dug in. The Kator hive mind, usually a single voice speaking for billions, began showing signs of internal fracture. Sub-collectives argued over whether humanity's absence was a threat or a chance to reshape the council in their own image. The Xanthari withdrew into silence, their crystalline faces unreadable. The Varelians tried to mediate, but their calm logic felt hollow without the human touch of empathy behind it. Back on Earth's former orbital station, a young archivist named Nina Patel sifted through abandoned files. She wasn't human. She was half Varelian, half Droth, but she had always admired Earth's culture. While others dismissed human records as disorganized, Nina saw patterns. She found video logs of Carl teaching a Kator junior engineer how to solder a circuit using a heated spoon. She watched Lena calm a frightened refugee child from a war-torn moon by singing a lullaby in 3 languages at once. Nina compiled these clips into a short presentation. She played it during a quiet session of the council archives. Only a few delegates stayed to watch, but those who did left changed. One of them was Councillor Vex. He had once called humans ephemerals. Now, watching Carl laugh as he fixed a broken air filter with chewing gum and wire, Vex felt a strange ache in his chest. It wasn't grief, not yet. It was regret. The breaking point came on Helio 7, a joint mining colony run by 3 species. The main reactor began overheating. Alarms blared. Evacuation orders were issued. Council engineers ran diagnostics but found no solution. The core would melt down in 6 hours, poisoning the entire sector. Then a lone figure appeared in the control room. It was Ray Briggs, a human technician who had stayed behind when the others left. No one knew why he remained. He didn't speak to anyone. He just walked to the reactor console, typed in a code no one recognized, and rerouted coolant through a secondary loop that shouldn't have existed. The temperature dropped. The crisis passed. Before anyone could thank him, Ray vanished into the maintenance tunnels. Days later, a data chip was found taped to the reactor housing. It contained full schematics for the emergency bypass along with handwritten notes. Use only if you've tried everything else. And for heaven's sake, oil the valve every month. The council retrieved the chip. They studied it. But the notes made no sense without context. The valve wasn't labeled in any official diagram. The phrase heaven's sake had no translation. They missed the point entirely. Ray Briggs was never seen again. Some said he boarded a freighter heading toward the outer rim. Others claimed he built a small habitat on a dead moon and lived out his days fixing old radios. No one knew for sure. But his act forced the council to face a truth they had ignored. The galaxy was falling apart without humans, not because humans were perfect, but because they were willing to try. To fail, to try again. Councillor Vex stood before the assembly and asked a question no one had dared to voice. What if we were wrong about them? Silence followed. Not the cold silence of indifference, but the heavy silence of realization. High Speaker Mira of the Varelians finally spoke. They did not leave because they were weak. They left because we refused to see their strength. That night the council voted, quietly without fanfare, to begin searching for humanity. Not to demand their return. Not to punish them, but to understand, to learn. Maybe, just maybe, to apologize, but space is vast, and humans, once gone, left no trail but the echoes of what they had fixed, what they had healed, and what they had quietly held together while no one was watching. The galaxy had taken their presence for granted. Now, in their absence, every broken system, every failed conversation, every moment of confusion was a reminder. Something precious had walked away, and no one knew how to bring it back. Humans walked away, and the Galactic Council realized too late what they'd lost. Part 3. Without humans, the galaxy began to unravel in small, quiet ways that grew louder with time. It started with the little things. Misaligned docking clamps that caused supply ships to bounce off stations, translation errors that turned friendly greetings into insults, and power grids that flickered for no clear reason. But soon the problems grew bigger, much bigger. On the border between Droth and Enlari space, a minor trade dispute over water rights turned violent. In the past, Lena Ortiz would have stepped in, not with laws or threats, but with questions. She would have asked what each side truly needed, not what they claimed to want. She might have found that the Droth didn't need more water. They needed filters to clean their own. And the Enlari weren't hoarding. They were scared their aquifers would run dry. A simple exchange of tech and trust would have solved it, but Lena was gone. The council sent a formal mediator trained in protocol, not people. He cited ancient treaties, demanded evidence, and insisted on written statements. The talks collapsed. A skirmish broke out. Then a blockade. Then real fighting. Ships were lost. Lives were taken. And for the first time in decades, blood stained the neutral zones. The council watched helpless. Their systems were built for order, not understanding. They had rules for everything, except how to fix a broken heart or a wounded pride. Back on the council station, Ray Briggs's schematics sat untouched in a secure archive. No one could make them work. The bypass system he'd left behind required a kind of thinking the council no longer practiced. Improvisation. Trial and error. Trust in a hunch. Their engineers wanted certainty. Humans had thrived in uncertainty. Meanwhile, on a dusty outpost near the Kuiper Expanse, a retired human medic named Doris Cole tended to a sick Kator worker. She wasn't supposed to be there. Like Ray, she had stayed behind when the evacuation order came. She said she just wasn't ready to leave yet. No one asked why. They were too grateful for her help. Doris didn't use the council's medical database. She mixed old Earth remedies with alien biology, creating treatments that shouldn't have worked but did. She wrapped the Kator's heat-sensitive limbs in damp cloth soaked in mint tea, lowering their fever without drugs. She sang softly while changing bandages, not because it helped the wound, but because it calmed the mind. When a council health inspector arrived, he was shocked. "This is not approved procedure," he said, scanning her notes. Doris just smiled. "It works, doesn't it?" He had no answer. She left the outpost a week later. No goodbye. Just an empty cot and a jar of homemade salve labeled for burns, bites, or bad days. The Couture kept it on their shelf like a relic. The council's search for humanity had begun, but it moved slowly. Bureaucracy choked urgency. Ships were assigned, routes plotted, but no one knew where to look. Humans hadn't left coordinates. They hadn't sent a message saying, "We're here." They had simply vanished into the dark. Then, a break. A deep-range sensor buoy near the edge of known space picked up a faint energy signature, irregular, pulsing, unlike any known drive system. It matched no Council, Couture, or Xanthari pattern, but it bore a strange rhythm, 3 short bursts, 2 long, then silence. It repeated every 17.3 minutes. Nina Patel recognized it immediately. She had studied old Earth archives. That pattern was Morse code. The message was simple. SOS, but not a cry for help, a signal, a beacon, a way to say, "We're here if you're looking." The Council sent a scout ship, the Varelian vessel Whisperwind, piloted by Mira herself. She took only a small crew and no weapons. This was not a mission of force, but of humility. After 6 weeks of travel, they found it, a hidden cluster of habitats orbiting a dim red dwarf star far beyond mapped space. The structures were cobbled together from old freighters, decommissioned stations, and parts that looked like they'd been salvaged from 100 different worlds. Solar panels hung at odd angles, antennas pointed in every direction. It was messy. It was alive. As the Whisperwind approached, a voice crackled over open channel. It was Lena Ortiz. Older, quieter, but unmistakable. "You took your time," she said. Mira's hands trembled on the controls. "We didn't know you'd left a trail." "We didn't," Lena replied. "But we knew someone might care enough to look." The humans had not built an empire. They had built a home. Children played in zero-G gardens. Elders taught engineering with scrap metal and stories. Carl Dawson was gone. He had died during the Exodus, helping a damaged ship reach safety. But his tools hung in a workshop, still oiled, still ready. Lena met Mira on the airlock platform. She wore simple clothes, her hair streaked with gray. No titles, no rank. Just a woman who had chosen peace over politics. "Why did you leave?" Mira asked. Lena looked out at the stars. "Because you only saw what we did, not who we were. You wanted workers, not neighbors. Fixers, not friends. We gave everything we had, and you thanked us by ignoring us." Mira had no defense. It was true. "We're not asking you to come back," she said softly. "We're asking, can we learn?" Lena studied her face. Then she nodded. "You can watch. You can listen. But you can't take. This is ours now," Mira agreed. For 3 days, the Whisperwind's crew observed. They saw humans repair a broken hydroponic pump using a child's toy motor. They watched a young boy explain gravity to a confused Xanthari visitor using marbles and string. They heard laughter during meals, not because everything was perfect, but because they chose joy anyway. When Mira returned to the Council, she brought no data chips, no blueprints, no demands. Just a single request: stop trying to control everything. Start trying to understand. The Council didn't change overnight, but something had shifted. The empty human chair no longer felt like a vacancy. It felt like a lesson, and far away in a quiet corner of the galaxy, humans lived on, not as heroes, not as saviors, but as people who had finally been allowed to be themselves. The galaxy missed them more than ever. But for the first time, it was beginning to understand why. Humans walked away, and the Galactic Council realized too late what they'd lost. Part 4. The Council did not rush back to the hidden human settlement. They waited. They watched. They listened. For the first time in centuries, they practiced patience. Mira's report had shaken them, not with fear, but with shame. They had treated humanity like a tool, not a people. Now they wanted to earn trust, not demand it. Months passed. The Council changed slowly. Old rules were reviewed. New voices were heard. Nina Patel was given a small office near the archives and asked to advise on cross-species communication. She filled the walls with quotes from human poets, engineers, and teachers. Simple words that carried deep meaning. Measure twice, cut once. Walk a mile in their shoes. Fix the roof while the sun shines. Delegates began to notice something strange. When they used human sayings in meetings, arguments cooled. Solutions appeared faster. It was as if those old Earth phrases held a kind of quiet wisdom the galaxy had forgotten. Then came the disaster. A massive stellar flare erupted from the star Helios Prime, a red giant near the edge of Council space. The burst was stronger than any recorded in history. It fried satellites, scrambled navigation systems, and overloaded power grids across 3 inhabited systems. Millions were in danger. Evacuation ships couldn't lock onto coordinates. Shield generators failed. Panic spread like fire. The Council scrambled. Their best scientists ran simulations. Their fleets mobilized. But their systems were too rigid, too perfect. They needed flexibility. They needed chaos with a purpose. They needed humans. Mira stood before the emergency session, her voice steady. "We know where they are. We must ask for help," Counselor Vex nodded. Not as a demand, as a plea. A message was sent to the hidden human settlement, not through official channels but on the same Morse code frequency they had used before. Just 3 words: "We need you." No reply came. Hours ticked by. Hope faded. The flare's radiation front drew closer. On the planet Varus 3, children huddled in underground shelters waiting for rescue that might never come. Then, without warning, ships appeared. Not Council vessels. Not marked with any known symbol. They dropped out of warp in a loose formation, silent and swift. Their hulls were patched, their engines humming with a sound that was both old and new. Human ships, they moved like a single mind. One group deployed emergency shields, fractal-patterned energy fields that bent radiation instead of blocking it. Another began evacuating civilians using shuttles that landed in fields, streets, even rooftops, guided by pilots who seemed to know exactly where people were hiding. A third team worked on the failing planetary grid, rerouting power through forgotten backup lines that no one else knew existed. No one gave orders over open comms. No one asked for thanks. They just worked. On Varus 3, a young girl named Ela watched from a broken window as a human pilot landed a shuttle in the schoolyard. The pilot stepped out, tall, calm, with kind eyes and grease on her sleeves. She didn't speak Ela's language, but she smiled and held out a hand. In her other hand, she carried a small box labeled First Aid Plus Candy. Ela took her hand. Back at the Council station, Mira watched the rescue unfold on live feed. She saw humans using tools that looked like toys, speaking in calm tones to terrified crowds and sharing rations with strangers. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't carry weapons. They carried hope. When the last civilian was safe and the radiation wave passed, the human ships powered down their engines. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then, just as quietly as they arrived, they left. No message, no demands, no goodbye. Only one thing remained. A data packet left on every Council ship involved in the rescue. Inside were updated shield harmonics, evacuation routes, and notes like, "Don't forget to check the coolant on Ship 7, it leaks when it's nervous," and "The kids on Varus 3 like strawberry gum." Keep some handy. The Council studied the data. This time they didn't try to copy it blindly. They tried to understand it. They saw that every fix had a reason, every note a story. Lena Ortiz's voice played in Mira's mind. You can watch. You can listen. But you can't take, and yet the humans had given anyway. Why? Because they cared. Not because they owed the galaxy anything, but because they remembered what it meant to be human, to help. Even when it hurt, even when you're not thanked. In the days that followed, the Council did something unprecedented. They held a silent minute in the main chamber. Not for the dead, but for the living who had walked away and still came back. Nina Patel placed a small earth flower, a sunflower, on the empty human chair. It had been grown from a seed found in Carl Dawson's old desk. It bloomed in artificial light, bright and stubborn. Counselor Vex stood beside it. "They didn't return because we asked," he said. "They returned because someone needed them. That is not weakness. That is strength we never understood." The galaxy began to change in deeper ways. Schools taught human history, not as a footnote, but as a lesson in resilience. Engineers studied Carl's messy designs and found elegance in their simplicity. Diplomats learned to listen before they spoke, thanks to Lena's example. But the humans stayed gone. No one knew if they would ever return to the council. Maybe they never would, and maybe that was okay, because the real gift wasn't their presence. It was the reminder they left behind, that kindness is not soft, that chaos can create, and that sometimes the quietest people hold the loudest truths. The council no longer saw the empty chair as a loss. They saw it as a promise, to do better, to be worthy. Even if no one was watching. Humans walked away and the Galactic Council realized too late. What they'd lost, part 5 years past. The galaxy healed slowly, not because everything was fixed, but because everyone had learned to fix things together. The council was no longer a place of rigid rules and cold logic. It had become something warmer, messier, more human, even without humans in the room. New delegates arrived from worlds that once stayed silent. They brought stories, not just data. They asked, "How are you?" Before, "What do you want?" Council meetings now began with a moment of shared silence, not out of tradition, but out of respect for the unseen, the ones who had taught them that listening matters more than speaking. Statues stood in the central plaza now. Not grand monuments of polished stone, but simple figures made of recycled metal and glass. One showed Carl Dawson kneeling beside a broken machine, his hands deep in wires. Another showed Lena Ortiz sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children of different species, her hands shaping words in the air. No names were carved beneath them. None were needed. Everyone knew who they were. Still, no human ship returned to council space. No message came. The hidden settlement near the red dwarf star remained just that, hidden. But its presence was felt in every repaired system, every mended alliance, every child who grew up hearing, "Be kind like the humans." Then came the day the galaxy faced its greatest test yet, a rogue black hole, undetected until it was too late, drifted into a densely populated sector. Its gravity well tugged at planets, twisted orbits, and threatened to swallow entire colonies. Evacuation was nearly impossible. The math was cruel. Time was short. The council gathered not in anger or panic but in quiet resolve. They ran simulations. They shared resources. They argued, yes, but now they argued to find the best way forward, not to win. And when all plans failed, Mira stood and said what no one else would. "We cannot do this alone." She sent a message, not a plea this time, but a simple truth. "The black hole is coming. We remember what you taught us, but we still need your eyes." She did not expect a reply. But 3 days later, as the first tidal quakes shook the outer moons, a single ship appeared on the edge of the danger zone. It was small, old, and bore no markings except a faded symbol on its side. A circle with a line through it. Like a sun rising, outstepped Lena Ortiz. Older now, her hair fully gray but her eyes sharp and calm. She carried no weapons, only a satchel of tools and a data pad covered in stickers. "I didn't come for you," she said when Mira met her on the observation deck. "I came for them." She pointed to the live feed showing families boarding shuttles on the doomed moon of Kethra. "You've changed. That's good, but saving lives isn't about who you are now. It's about who they are." She didn't stay long. She walked the command center, asked quiet questions, and then pointed to a forgotten mining tunnel on Kethra's southern ridge. "Use that as an emergency launch path. The rock there is stable. Your scans missed it because you were looking for perfect, not possible." She showed them how to sync shield frequencies using music. Yes, music, because harmonic resonance worked better when it had rhythm. She reminded engineers to let the machine breathe instead of forcing it to obey. And when a young Xanthari technician froze in fear, Lena sat beside him and said, "It's okay to be scared. Just don't let it stop your hands." For 2 days she worked beside them, not as a leader, not as a savior, but as a guide. When the last ship cleared the black hole's pull, she was gone. Only her datapad remained, left on the main console. On its screen glowed a single line. "You did this. I just reminded you how." The galaxy was saved not by a miracle but by memory. In the aftermath, the council did not throw a celebration. They held a gathering. Delegates from every species sat in a circle, sharing stories of what they had lost, what they had learned, and what they would protect. A Droth elder spoke of how his grandson now fixed broken toys instead of throwing them away. A Yanlari poet read a verse about hands that build in the dark. Counselor Vex stood last. He held the sunflower Nina Patel had once placed on the human chair. It had been dried, preserved, and passed down through seasons. They walked away because we didn't see them, he said, his voice low but clear. Now we see. Not just their skill, but their heart. Not just what they did, but why they did it. They didn't want power. They wanted connection. And we were too proud to notice. He placed the flower in a new spot, center stage, where all could see it. From that day on, the Council's charter included 3 new principles. Written in every language: adapt, care, try again. No one knew if humans would ever return to sit among them. Maybe they were happy where they were, building lives among the stars without titles or treaties. Maybe they watched from afar, smiling when they saw a child share food or an engineer laugh after fixing something impossible, but it no longer mattered whether they came back, because they had already changed everything. The galaxy had once thought strength meant control, order, perfection. Now it knew better. True strength was helping without being asked. It was fixing what's broken, even if no one says thank you. It was walking away when you're not valued, and coming back when others are in need. Humans had not been the galaxy's rulers. They had been its teachers. And though they chose their own path, their lesson lived on, in every act of kindness, every second chance, every quiet hand that reached out in the dark. The Council finally understood. They hadn't lost humanity. They had found themselves because of them.